Andrew's entrance arouses amusement as much as anything, but there's no shortage of young volunteers to try on the tartan. What do you think?
They're all quite small, aren't they?
Marvellous. Does it make you feel Scottish?
Yes.
Are we ready? Go! Woo! Let's go, everyone's up here!
Uganda might once have been ruled by a president who claimed to be King of Scotland, but Kayleigh never made an impact until today.
It's almost like being at home! Woo! Woo! Right, woo!
It's part 2 of the Bags of Life lesson, a chance for the Kampala pupils to provide a taste and snapshot of their lives for the children of Harpenden. For Suzanne, there's an early realisation that these pupils are not used to working on their own.
So I'm just writing some questions on the board that might help you with some ideas to put in your letters. What's your best?
With frequent prompting, however, the class soon settles to a more informal approach.
That's wonderful. Can you explain what these instruments are called? Because my children would really like to know the names, don't you, with the fingers? It's lovely. Whoa! Now these instruments are ones that we saw. This drum is really huge. It sounds about 4 feet tall. It's called a long drum. Why do you think you might need this?
Is it a mosquito net?
Good girl, that's right, because mosquitoes carry malaria. So, I mean, this is actually showing that Wilson has a relatively affluent lifestyle, that he can actually buy one of these and afford to have one.
How are you and how is life? I live at Nachini and I have 3 sisters. I'm in primary 6 and I am 11 years old, like swimming, netball, volleyball and rugby.
My best lesson is English. My best food is posho.
Mrs. Webb, what is posho?
Posho, well that is, it's made from maize flour, which is very, very white when it's ground down, and it's mixed into a really sort of thick paste, which is almost like a very, very dry porridge. And you have drawn beautiful pictures of some wonderful African animals. And my class are going to be really interested to see the sorts of animals that you have.
I would like to be a doctor when I leave school. I enjoy about learning
Most when coming to school. We go across Lava in our garden.
I support Manchester United.
Which football team do you support?
This is what Mrs. Webb ended up wearing when she was dancing.
Good smile.
When you leave school, what job would you like to have? A teacher, great. What job? A nurse, wonderful. What job would you like to be? An engineer?
And he said that he wants to be an engineer, but I think he should be a drawer.
Oh yeah, look at this. This one's absolutely beautiful.
That is so gorgeous. You wouldn't find any of that in England.
Did you have a favourite picture?
Yeah.
Which was yours?
My mother and my brother.
What about families? George?
Well, some of them were quite big compared to ours. One of them said they had 7 sisters and 6 brothers.
So much, much bigger families than we're used to. Well done.
No.
They have a very set style that they're used to, a very formulaic approach to learning. I find it very difficult to slot into that. They're used to doing things where everybody does exactly the same thing and they all produce exactly the same work. And that's not something that I'm used to at home.
Andrew needs to complete his cultural exchange by learning a dance from East Africa. It wasn't part of Suzanne's plans, but she's been given tail feathers and she's just got to shake them. The dance is called Baksimba. It celebrates the banana harvest, not as a supply of food, but a source of alcohol. How's it going?
not quite managing to stepping and shaking at the same time, but we're trying.
Andrew's latest school video demonstrates that stepping and shaking also proved a challenge for his pupils, but he's fulfilled his pledge to introduce Baximba to Edinburgh.
Joseph.
Suzanne and Andrew can finally take a seat. In fact, they spend the next 2 hours in these seats, taking part in a teacher's workshop.
By the end of the workshop, participants should be able to explain what learning is.
It's a professional development session that surprises the two visitors.
Here, you should expect children to copy you. If you are pronouncing a word poorly, or you have a certain mannerism in your speech, the children sometimes go back and they also try to imitate you. But that is bad.
So what surprised you?
Well, I guess the fact that they recognise there are different ways to learn, because I think what we have seen in classes is one particular formula for learning.
Yeah, and for all the children, regardless of their age or their abilities or the size of the class, there seems to be one very set lesson structure which they stick to.
And I think perhaps this afternoon that was made clear in the fact that the key methodology that they talked about was imitating the role of the teacher, and imitation from words on the board, imitating the role of the teacher, what was being said.
Following the presentations, the UK teachers are asked to lead a question and answer session. The first thing they do is rearrange the chairs, an immediate reflection of their differing styles. The first question is about misbehaviour in class.
What do you do to such children in class? Do you punish them? What do you do?
We have a thing called a golden time, which is a period of 30 minutes every week that the children can choose whatever they want to do. And if a child throughout the week doesn't follow the rules that you have in the class, they would lose a certain amount of that time.
What about your marking with such huge classes? I complain about marking 30 books, but for every lesson you might have 100. How do you manage that?
The answer is they don't. As they explain, they usually mark a sample number and put more reliance on classroom responses.
So you do most of the work orally in the class, then when it comes to giving the work to mark, you try to reduce the number you can give so that you can mark at the end of it all and make correction.
Do you encourage the children to mark their work? No. Because that's something that we would do.
They were quite intrigued by your suggestion about using children to mark other children.
Intrigued or horrified, I'm not quite sure which it was. A combination of the two. Just trying to think of techniques that I use to reduce my workload.
I think the other thing that they talked about was that assessment partly was oral, and you know, that's fab. I mean, we will do that in the classroom. You will be assessing constantly as you chat to the children, but the oral aspect in the classroom that we've heard has been chanting en masse.
Gathering what, class? Fruits.
Do you think it's not really possible to have effective assessment with these sort of class sizes?
To assess fully the learning of each individual child with a class of 100, it's nigh on impossible.
Which I think is why, you know, perhaps initially our response to the teaching styles that we've seen was one of, oh my goodness, you know, this is so far removed, how do you know if they're learning? But actually, with hindsight, when you think, hang on a minute, there's 100 children in this room, what else are they going to do?
Suzanne and Andrew's final day starts with an assembly. It's followed by a presentation on sexual health, including the dangers of bad touches.
Bad touches. Examples of bad touches.
Touching on the bums.
Yes.
Touching on the breast.
Yes.
What do you think of this approach to sex education?
Very direct. We've got the pre-primary children here as well who are only 3. So yeah, very, very direct approach.
Is there anything wrong with that?
I'm not quite sure it's appropriate perhaps for the younger children. I think it is very abrupt. I think maybe we could do with being a little bit more sensitive to it.
Yeah.
Barembe School is joined by children from 6 other schools from its cluster to stage a concert in honour of the visitors, including representatives from international charities and foundations. Without their help, many of the children performing today would still be waiting for a place in school or be without basic equipment. £500,000 raised in the UK is being spent on a community education programme in Uganda, including a project called the Enhancement of Universal Primary Education in Kampala, which is run through a partnership between government and non-government organisations. In the middle of the concert, Andrew goes missing from the audience. Unexpectedly, he's been asked to dust down his sporran.
That was a quick change. It was a very quick change. I don't think I'd normally put the kilt on quite so quickly, but we're ready to perform. And enthusiastic and happy, and these are the ones who want to dance.
The concert is followed by a meeting with head teachers from the cluster and a final debriefing session.
I'm just learning something new now that we will say that a smile is a resource. So now I will continue to smile.
Apart from the value of smiling, other simple lessons have been learned, such as the importance of sharing.
The way that you work with your cluster schools, I think, is something that I will take back to England, because there are several primary schools in the town where I work, and we do have opportunities to work together, but we don't perhaps make as much use of them as perhaps you do.
The other things that we found really special was the involvement of the parents in the school. I mean, the schools that we both work at, we do have very supportive parents, but we know nationally, you know, it's a big challenge to always keep people involved in the children's learning, so a really important point.
What's the most important thing that you think you have learned?
The way you handle the pupils in the UK, like as Mr. Lugema was saying, that at times when we are teaching and then a child annoys you, you feel like pinching that child, but I think after you've talked to us, after you've told us how we will control our temper and we put on the smiling faces as you've said it.
It's only been a brief visit, but it's clear the impact it's had on everyone involved will last a long time. The UK teachers have seen how class sizes can dictate the style of teaching and assessment. But their Ugandan colleagues have witnessed the possibilities of a more informal approach.
It makes children to imagine things and learn better than a mere teacher just teaching and going out.
Is that something you could use more in this country, do you think?
Obviously.
Would it work in this country because of the class sizes?
It can work.
The big thing is the fact that they have that desire to learn and that desire to improve. And yes, there may be big steps that need to be taken. But I think professionally, all teachers recognise that
we all need to do.
We do. And so, it's important that they see that it's not just them that has to learn, but it's us that continue to improve our skills and our abilities.
Andrew and Suzanne's desire to develop as teachers may have been reinforced, but whether they decide to improve their Baksimba remains to be seen.